Shows led by black hosts from Brisbane, Australia. The latest from podnews.net with Supporting Cast, trusted by the biggest names to sell podcast subscriptions. A black-owned news aggregation app called Haiti claims it's now the largest source of podcasts led by black hosts. The app lists more than 2,000 shows. A new podcast hosting company, Show Platform, launched. The company offers 35 modules, allowing entrepreneurs and influencers to host podcasts and repurpose them into different formats. Podcast host Podigy is celebrating its 10th anniversary. The company is based in Berlin, in Germany. Bobby Lee, a comedian, is suing Amazon's Wondery over a cancelled podcast contract. Adam Bowie was in the audience during the Edison Research presentation at the Podcast Show 2023. He posts more of the UK data shared at the event. I've also uploaded a copy of my speech from the Podcast Show 2023 on the last 12 months in podcasting and the kind of industry we want podcasting to be in the future. You'll find that linked from our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. Live One is looking to acquire Cast Media's top shows in an all-stock deal. No further detail was given of the, quotes, contemplated acquisition. And thank you to ARN's iHeart Podcast Network Australia for becoming our latest supporter. Thanks to our supporters, we can offer Pod News free to everyone. You can support Pod News personally or on behalf of your company at podnews.net/support. In People News, Julie Shapiro has been hired as a supporter and advisor to Canadaland, the Canadian podcast network. She had been with Novel, PRX and Radiotopia. It's time for some tech stuff. Popular podcasting 2.0 app Fountain has seen an upgrade. It now supports transcripts, not just those using the podcast transcript feature, but it'll also produce transcripts on demand. It supports the live item tag too, and works faster with many other additions. Embedding a podcast player into your site, we link to quite a few options today, and we've also written a piece on how to choose the best podcast host. Here's a tip: it's not SoundCloud. And in podcast news, Indian Podcasting Revolution is a new show looking at the podcast industry in India. The show gives a shout out to noteworthy Indian podcasts, interviews successful independent podcasters, and gets insights from global experts to shape up the Indian podcasting landscape. And new in New Zealand this week is The Good Sex Project from Stuff, proudly brought to you by Hell, the website says, which turns out to be a pizza chain. Hosted by Melody Thomas, the podcast is all about good relationships, while Hell will serve you up brimstone, pandemonium, gluttony, and a vegetarian option of purgatory. This podcast is sponsored by Supporting Cast. What does Sony, Pushkin, APM, Slate, WNYC Studios, Q-Code and Tenderfoot TV have in common? They all rely on Supporting Cast to sell podcast subscriptions. Find out why at supportingcast.fm. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.